Hey guys, welcome once again to the Layman's Lounge, and it's time for the evidence number 2 for the existence of God. And just to recap for evidence number 1, that was the cosmological argument, which says that everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe had a beginning, therefore the universe had a cause. And we looked at the scientific evidence that shows that the Big Bang was something that caused the universe. And basically, to summarize the cosmological argument, if there's a Big Bang, then it requires a Big Banger. And so that is the simplest way that I can put evidence number 1. Evidence number 2 is called the teleological argument. And this has been created in several forms over the years. One of the most famous ones that it's been formed into was the watchmaker analogy, which was created by William Paley. And this is the 3 premises that this one has. He says that, number 1, a watch shows that it was put together for an intelligent purpose, to keep time. It has a spring to give it motion. It has a series of wheels to transmit this motion. The wheels are made of brass so that they do not rust. The spring is made of steel because of the resilience of that metal. And the front cover is of glass so that no one can see through it. Number 2, the world shows an even greater evidence of design than a watch. The world is a greater work of art than a watch. The world has more subtle and complex design than a watch. And the world has an endless variety of means adapted to ends. So number 3, therefore, if the existence of a watch implies a watchmaker, the existence of the world implies an even greater intelligent designer, which is implied as God. Now, aside from the watchmaker analogy, a more simple way of putting it into 3 components is, number 1, the universe resulted either from design or from chance. Number 2, it is highly improbable that it resulted from chance. And number 3, hence, it is highly probable that the universe was designed. Now, why do I say that it's highly improbable that it resulted from chance? Well, a lot of the evidence and conclusions that even scientists have come up with is that the universe seems to be fine-tuned for life to exist. Now, actually, scientists have so far discovered about 50 of these parameters and constants that must be just so in order for life to be possible anywhere in the universe. So let's look at a couple examples of these. First of all, physicists have discovered 4 forces in nature, and one of them is the force of gravity. Now, physicists have calculated that the strength of each of these forces must fall within a very specific range, or there would be no conscious life possible. So if the force of gravity, for example, were to change by 1 part in 10,000 billion relative to the total range of the strengths of the 4 forces in nature, conscious life would be virtually impossible anywhere in the universe. Not very good odds, if you were looking at that, for life to exist, and yet it does. Now, there are many other parameters, such as if a neutron were not exactly as it is, about 1.001 times the mass of a proton, then all protons would have decayed into neutrons, or all neutrons would have decayed into protons, and life would not be possible. If the explosion of the Big Bang had differed in strength by as little as 1 part in 10 to the 60th power, which, by the way, is 1 part in a trillion, the universe would have either quickly collapsed back on itself or expanded too swiftly for stars to form. But either way, life would not be possible. And the list really goes on and on for the universe. But really, even with that, there's some fascinating characteristics of a planet that are necessary to happen too. These include consisting of correct mass, being orbited by a large moon, having a magnetic field, manifesting an oxygen-rich atmosphere, orbiting a main sequence, G2 dwarf star, being in the correct location in the galactic habitable zone. So many of these things that have to be just there in order for a planet to exist and support life. And if one of these didn't happen, then we would have no life. And I think the amazing thing about all these statistics with both the planet and the universe itself is it's not like, well, if one thing didn't work and all the other things did, then life would still exist. No, every single one of these has to have happened. And if something was off by just a very minute amount, and you saw the fractions that I was giving, that would not support life, and yet it does. So just looking at that alone, if you're looking at the evidence that we have and looking at the odds, are you really willing to believe that it is more likely that this happened by chance rather than design? A lot of people who object to this argument say, well, it is possible that there are many universes in the world, and we just happen to be the lucky ones where it worked out. Well, for one thing, that is entirely speculative. There is no scientific evidence that multi-universes exist and that we lucked out. All we have is the evidence of how unlikely it is for life to have happened, and yet it did. So to assume that there are many universes out there is just pure speculation. Another objection that comes across is that people say that there may have been a many-universe generator that was there, and that's how it happened. But if you really think about it, this generator itself would have to be extremely sophisticated device in order to produce countless universes. This is a and we're assuming that this generator has no intelligence, and yet it can produce many, universes all at once. I mean, even a toaster needs to be well designed in order to toast bread, and think about how much more complex the universe is than a toaster. So how much more so a universe maker who produces countless universes, including finely tuned ones like our own? What kind of an incredible intelligence could account for such an astounding machine or process such as that? So that's another objection there. Another one that I've heard is that if the evidence points to a divine designer, then who designed the designer? Well, really this sidesteps the issue. Even if we don't answer this question, then why are you questioning that? The evidence shows that it's better explained by design than chance. You're kind of sidestepping the issue by asking who designed the designer. There is a good answer to that, and I talked about that in the cosmological argument, but really that's kind of a question to sidestep the issue. Now, let's end with this kind of story that I've created here to just give you kind of an idea of what I'm talking about here. Let's say I decided to take a space flight, a one-man space flight, didn't tell anybody about it, just took off. And I arrived at a planet that didn't have anybody else around, no life that I could see, but I saw a house there. And so I land on the planet and I go in this house, and inside I see a refrigerator with a freezer that has a bunch of frozen pizzas that are Supreme pizzas in it. I walk around other parts of the house and I see DVDs from classic movies like It's a Wonderful Life, The Princess Bride, Gremlins. I see some DVDs of the history of the Chicago Cubs there. I go upstairs and I see a bookshelf that has a lot of books such as Surprised by Faith and other books that show evidences for God. And I look at all this stuff and I say, wow, this is a great place. This place looks like it was meant for me. Now, of course, I didn't assume just by walking in that this was a place that occurred just by chance, just because I didn't see anybody who was there. There were so many specific things that were there that looked like it was meant for me. In fact, it looked like I was expected. So that's one way to kind of look at the fine-tuning of the universe. So many things had to happen for life to exist. And the odds of it happening were so minute, and yet it did. It was almost as if we were expected to be there. So, is this an open and shut case that God exists? Well, by itself, I wouldn't go quite that far, but I think it is strong evidence that there is an intelligent designer, and combining that with a cosmological argument and several arguments that I'll have following this, I think the case is building that God does in fact exist. So comment below if you have any thoughts to this, and I would like you to subscribe too so you can stay tuned to all the great videos we have in the future. Thanks, guys.